It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the phone rang. The voice of Leo, my 16-year-old grandson, was trembling on the other end of the line in a way I had never heard before. "Grandma Elsa, don't go home. Please, just stay where you are." His ragged breath sent a chill through my blood. "Leo? What's happening? Why are you talking like this?" I asked, but he just kept repeating the same thing over and over. "Don't go home, Grandma, trust me. I'm begging you." 10 minutes later, from the window of the hotel where I was staying after visiting my sister in the hospital, I saw the red and blue flashing lights of police cruisers surrounding my street. 5, 6, 7 vehicles. My heart stopped. My house, the house where I had raised my children, where I had celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, was being surrounded as if it were a criminal's hideout. But what I didn't know was that, according to the papers they had filed that night, the criminal was me. 3 hours earlier, when I still believed I had a family that loved me, I had been sitting in that very living room, making chamomile tea. The afternoon had been strange, I have to admit. Robert, my 45-year-old son, had arrived with Caroline, his wife, and with Chloe, my 19-year-old granddaughter. They were all smiling too much. Those forced smiles that now, looking back, I realized never reached their eyes. "Mom, we need to talk about some important things," Robert had said, settling into the green velvet couch that had belonged to my mother. Caroline held a manila folder in her hands, clutching it as if it were something precious. Chloe, my dear granddaughter, avoided looking at me directly. That should have alarmed me. Chloe had always been my partner in crime, my confidant. Since she was little, she would come to tell me her secrets while I cooked or watered the plants in the garden. The late afternoon light filtered through the white lace curtains, creating long shadows on the hardwood floor I had polished just that morning. The scent of the tea mixed with Caroline's strong perfume, a scent I had always found too intense for a home as old as mine. Everything seemed normal, familiar, but there was something in the air that made me feel uneasy. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, pouring the tea into the porcelain cups I had inherited from my grandmother, the same cups I had used to give Robert drinks from when he was a boy with a fever, the same ones where I had comforted Chloe when her first boyfriend broke up with her. Caroline exchanged a look with Robert. It was one of those glances heavy with meaning, the kind that married couples develop after years together. A silent communication that completely excluded me. "Mom," Robert began, and his voice sounded different, more formal, as if he were reading a prepared speech. "We've been worried about you." "Worried? Why?" The question escaped my mouth with a nervous laugh. I felt like an actress who had forgotten her lines in the middle of a play. "Lately, you've been different," Caroline continued, opening the folder. "You forget things, you repeat the same stories, sometimes you don't recognize people." Her voice was soft, but there was something calculated about it, as if she had rehearsed these words in front of a mirror. I remained silent, holding my teacup. The hot steam rose to my face, and for a moment I thought that maybe they were right. Maybe I really was losing my memory. At 73 years old, it was possible. But something inside me, a small but firm voice, told me this wasn't about my memory. It was about something much darker. "Chloe has noticed it too," Robert added, and my granddaughter finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, but she said nothing. She just nodded slowly, like a programmed robot. The room filled with a heavy silence. The grandfather clock in the corner marked 6:30 in the evening with its constant tick-tock, a sound that had been the soundtrack of my life for decades. The cream-colored walls, decorated with family photographs of happy moments, seemed to close in on me. In one of those photos, Robert was 8 years old and hugging me after winning a math competition at school. In another, Chloe was blowing out the candles on her 15th birthday cake, wearing a white dress I had helped pick out. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, placing the cup on the table with more force than necessary. The sound of porcelain against wood echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Caroline took a paper out of the folder. "We've spoken with Dr. Harris. He thinks it would be a good idea for you to have some medical tests, just to be sure." Dr. Harris. The name hit me like a slap. I hadn't seen Dr. Harris in over 2 years. The last time was for a routine checkup, and everything had been perfect. My blood pressure was fine, my blood tests were normal, my mind was as clear as a spring morning. How was it possible that he had talked to my family about my mental health without even seeing me? When did you talk to Dr. Harris? I asked, trying to stay calm. My voice sounded strangely quiet, but inside I felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit. Last week, Robert answered quickly. We went to consult with him because we were worried. We told him about the episodes you've been having. What episodes? The question came out of my throat like a rough whisper. I haven't had any episodes. Caroline exchanged another one of those looks with Robert. It was like watching a play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. Mom, last Tuesday you called us 5 times asking if we'd seen your purse. You were holding it in your hands on the 5th call. That was a lie. I remembered that Tuesday perfectly. I had called only once because I couldn't find my car keys, and I had found them in the kitchen 10 minutes later. But when I opened my mouth to contradict her, I saw the expression on Chloe's face. My granddaughter was looking at me with such sadness that the words got stuck in my throat. And on Friday, Caroline continued, consulting what appeared to be a handwritten list, you went to the grocery store and bought milk 3 times on the same day. The cashier called us because he was concerned. Another lie. I had only gone to the grocery store once on Friday. I had bought my usual things. I had chatted with Kevin, the cashier who had known me for years, about his new granddaughter. But there was Caroline, with her list, with her expression of concern, so convincing that for a moment I doubted my own memory. The sun had set completely, and the living room lamps created yellow circles of light that didn't quite reach the corners. The shadows seemed to move, as if they were silent witnesses to this surreal conversation. The aroma of the tea had turned bitter in my mouth. Besides, Robert added, taking out his cell phone, you've been doing strange things with your money. The screen lit up his face as he showed me a screenshot of my bank account. Last month, you withdrew $3,000 in cash. When we asked you what you needed it for, you couldn't tell us. My blood ran cold. I had withdrawn that $3,000 to help Leo with his college expenses. It had been a secret between him and me because I knew Robert would object, thinking it was too much money for a 16-year-old. But Leo had gotten a partial scholarship to study engineering, and he needed money for books and materials. I had been clear with him, it was our secret until he turned 18 and could manage his own finances. I know perfectly well what I used that money for, I said, but my voice sounded less convincing than I had hoped. For what? Caroline asked, leaning forward. There was something in her posture, in the way she held her pen over her notepad, that made me feel like I was being interrogated. I couldn't tell them the truth, not without betraying Leo's trust. But my silence was interpreted as confusion, as proof that I was truly losing my mind. I saw Robert and Caroline exchange another glance, this time of satisfaction. Mom, Robert said, his voice softening like it did when he was a child and had broken something, trying to avoid punishment. We just want to take care of you. This house is too big for you alone. There are stairs. There are so many rooms to keep clean. It would be much easier for you to live somewhere smaller, more comfortable. There it was. The real reason behind this whole charade. My house. This 2-story house, with its 4 bedrooms, its garden full of rose bushes I had planted myself, its spacious kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals, its living room where I had comforted my children when they cried, where I had celebrated every one of my grandchildren's achievements. This house that I had bought with my late husband by working day and night for 30 years. This house, which, according to the most recent estimates, was worth around $250,000. My house is perfectly fine as it is, I said, and this time my voice was firm. I don't need to move anywhere. But think about it, Mom, Caroline insisted. A nice, modern apartment. No stairs to climb, no garden to maintain. You could use the money from the sale to travel, to enjoy your final years. My final years. As if I already had 1 foot in the grave. As if my life was a countdown that only they could see. Chloe cleared her throat. Grandma, maybe you could consider moving closer to us. There's a really nice residential complex a few blocks from our house. You could visit us every day. For the first time in the conversation, Chloe had spoken directly to me, but even her words sounded rehearsed. I looked into her eyes, searching for any trace of the granddaughter I had raised, the one I had comforted when her parents fought, the one who came to me for advice about boys and life. But the person in front of me was a stranger with my granddaughter's face. "And what if I don't want to move?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. The silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Caroline closed her folder with a sharp snap. Chloe looked down at her hands. "Mom," Robert finally said, "if you're really sick, if your mind is affected, then maybe you're not capable of making that decision for yourself." The words fell like stones into a calm lake, creating ripples that spread throughout the room. I understood in that moment that this wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration. They had already decided my future. They had already drawn up the blueprints for my life without consulting me. They just needed my signature, my cooperation, my surrender. I rose from my chair slowly. My legs were shaking, but not from weakness, from a cold anger that was beginning to grow in my chest like a poisonous plant. "I think it's time for you to leave," I said. Robert stood up too. "Mom, don't be angry. We're just trying to help you." "Help me?" The word sounded like a bitter laugh. "Help me by telling a doctor I haven't seen in years that I'm losing my mind? Help me by inventing episodes that never happened? Help me sell my house without my consent?" "No one said anything about selling without your consent," Caroline protested, but her voice sounded hollow. I walked them to the door in silence. The night air was cool and smelled of jasmine from my neighbor's garden. The streetlights had just come on, creating golden pools on the pavement. Everything seemed normal, ordinary, but I knew that nothing would ever be the same. Before getting into the car, Chloe came over to me. For a moment, I thought she would hug me, that she would tell me this was all a terrible misunderstanding, but instead, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "Grandma," she whispered, "please, read this when you're alone." I closed the door with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The house felt different, as if it had changed while they were here. The same furniture, the same photographs on the walls, but now everything seemed tainted by their words, by their lies. I unfolded the paper Chloe had given me with trembling hands. Her handwriting, that round script I had taught her when she was 7, said simply, "Grandma, be careful. They're not telling the truth. I love you." I collapsed onto the couch, holding the note to my chest. At least Chloe. At least she knew something was wrong. But if she knew, why had she participated in the whole farce? Why had she pretended to agree with them? The questions crowded my mind like frightened birds. I decided to call Dr. Harris. If he had really spoken with my family, I needed to know what he had told them. I dialed his office number, knowing it was late, but hoping to get the answering service. To my surprise, he answered himself. "Dr. Harris? This is Elsa Martinez. I need to talk to you about a conversation you supposedly had with my family." The silence on the other end of the line stretched on for too long. "Mrs. Martinez," he finally said, "I haven't spoken with any member of your family. In fact, according to my records, the last time I saw you was over 2 years ago, and everything was perfectly normal at that time." The floor moved beneath my feet. "Are you sure? My son Robert and my daughter-in-law Caroline said they came to consult with you about my mental health last week. I assure you that did not happen. If they had come to see me, I would have a record of the appointment. Besides, I couldn't even discuss your medical condition with them without your written consent." His voice sounded concerned now. "Mrs. Martinez, is everything all right?" I hung up the phone without answering. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the receiver. They had lied. They had lied about everything. Dr. Harris, the episodes of confusion, the repetitive calls, the multiple milk purchases. It had all been an elaborate fabrication designed to make me doubt my own sanity. But why? What did they gain from it? The answer came like a lightning bolt. The house, the $250,000 it was worth, my savings account, where I had another $80,000 accumulated over years of work and my late husband's pension, my life insurance policies, my will, where I left everything equally divided between my 2 children and my grandchildren. But if I was declared mentally incompetent, if I was put in a nursing home, Robert, as my eldest son, would have legal power over all my finances. He could sell the house, manage my bank accounts, make all the decisions for me. And Caroline, his calculating wife, would be right there to ensure that every penny was managed according to her own interests. I went up to my room with legs that felt like jelly. I needed to think. I needed to understand the magnitude of what I was facing. But when I reached the second floor, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The door to my late husband's study was ajar. I always kept it closed, always. I entered slowly. The files I kept on the desk had been moved. Not obviously, but I knew every paper, every document. Someone had been going through my things. The drawer where I kept important papers was slightly open, something I would never have left that way. I checked quickly. My will was still there, but there were fingerprints on the envelope. The deeds to the house had been photocopied. I could see the scanner marks on the edges. My bank statements had new creases, as if someone had studied them carefully. When had they done this? How had they gotten in? And then I remembered. Last week, when I went to visit my sister at the hospital, I had given my keys to Chloe to water the plants. "Of course, Grandma. Don't worry about a thing," she had said with that sweet smile that now seemed sinister in retrospect. My own granddaughter had allowed them to search my house. She had been their accomplice. I ran down to the kitchen and checked the drawer where I kept the spare key. It was gone. They had made copies. They could enter my house whenever they wanted, take whatever they needed, look for any document that would serve their plan. The phone rang and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Martinez?" The voice was professional, formal. "I am Vincent Blackwood. I represent your family in some legal matters. Could we meet tomorrow to discuss some care options that might benefit you?" "What family?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your son Robert and your daughter-in-law Caroline have consulted me about the possibility of establishing a legal guardianship due to your medical situation. I understand there have been some concerning episodes lately." I hung up the phone without another word. They had already contacted a lawyer. They were already moving the legal pieces to have me declared incompetent. How long had they been planning this? Months? Years? I thought of all the times Caroline had casually suggested the house was too big for me. All the times Robert had commented on how expensive it was to maintain such an old property. All the times they had talked about nursing homes as if they were luxury resorts where I would be very happy. They hadn't been innocent comments. They had been seeds, carefully planted over months to prepare the ground for this moment. I poured myself a glass of red wine, something I rarely did, but I needed to calm my nerves. My reflection in the kitchen window looked back at me. A 73-year-old woman with perfectly coiffed gray hair, wearing a pale pink sweater that Chloe had given me for my birthday. I looked exactly like what I was. An ordinary, vulnerable, easily fooled grandmother. But inside, something had changed. A hardness I didn't know I possessed was beginning to crystallize in my chest. If they wanted to play dirty, if they wanted to use my love for them as a weapon against me, then they needed to know who they were dealing with. I went to my room and pulled a shoebox from the back of the closet. Inside were my most important documents. Copies of my will, the original papers for the house, my insurance policies, my bank statements. There was also something I had kept for years without thinking I would ever need it. The letters my late husband had written to me during our courtship, where he mentioned his plans to buy this house for our future family. But more importantly, there was a sealed envelope containing something that not even Robert knew existed. Leo's adoption papers. When he was 3 and his biological parents died in an accident, Robert and Caroline had legally adopted him. But during the process, I had been designated as a backup guardian in case anything happened to them. It was a minor legal detail, something the lawyer had suggested just in case, but it could be crucial now. If Leo was in danger, if they were using him as part of their plan, I had legal rights that could protect him. I put all the documents in a handbag and hid it under my bed. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank and withdraw a significant amount of cash. I would also go see my own lawyer, Arthur Vance, who had handled my husband's legal affairs for years. He would know what to do, how to protect me from what was coming. But before that, I needed to talk to Leo. I needed to know how much he knew, how much he was being forced to participate in this deception. I dialed his cell number, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times with the same result. Finally, I decided to send him a text message. "Leo, it's Grandma. I need to talk to you urgently. Are you okay?" The reply came an hour later, when I had already lost hope. "Grandma, I can't talk on the phone." Dad checked my phone. "I'm going to school early tomorrow. Can you meet me at the park across from the school at 7 o'clock in the morning? I have something very important to tell you." My heart pounded. Leo knew something. And whatever information he had, it was serious enough that he was afraid of his father finding out. I didn't sleep a minute that night. I sat in my favorite chair, looking out the window at the silent street, thinking about everything that had changed in just a few hours. This morning, I had been a trusting, happy grandmother. Tonight, I was a woman who had discovered that the people she loved most in the world had betrayed her in the cruelest way possible. But I was also a woman who had survived 73 years in this world, who had raised 2 children alone after being widowed, who had worked for decades to build a decent life, and I was not going to let them take it from me without a fight. When the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, I got dressed carefully. Comfortable pants, walking shoes, a jacket with large pockets where I could hide important documents. I pulled my hair back into a low bun and put on a pair of sunglasses. I was going to war. The park was deserted at 7 o'clock in the morning, covered in a light fog that made everything seem dreamlike. Leo was already there, sitting on a bench under the large oak tree where I used to take him to play when he was little. He had his school backpack on his lap and was constantly looking over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to follow him. When he saw me walking toward him, he jumped to his feet. His face was pale, and he had dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept either. My grandson, who had always been tall for his age, seemed to have shrunk overnight. "Grandma," he whispered, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I thought you wouldn't come. I thought maybe they had convinced you that you're really sick." "They?" I asked, though I already knew who he meant. Leo looked around the empty park once more before answering. "Dad, Mom, and Chloe. Grandma, they have a horrible plan. I heard everything." He sat on the bench and took his cell phone out of his backpack. "Last night, after they got back from your house, they stayed up talking in the kitchen until very late. They thought I was asleep, but I went downstairs to get some water, and I heard them." I recorded part of the conversation. With trembling hands, he touched the screen and began to play an audio file. The voices were clearly recognizable: Robert, Caroline, and Chloe speaking in urgent whispers. "The lawyer says we need more evidence that she's losing her mental capacity," Caroline's voice said. "A single fake medical consultation won't be enough for the judge." "We already have the forged medical documents," Robert replied. "Vincent took care of that. And we have the photos of the inside of the house. All her bank accounts, copies of everything. But we need witnesses," Caroline insisted. "People who will confirm she's had episodes of confusion. The neighbors, the grocery store staff, someone." Chloe's voice was barely audible. "I don't like this. She's my grandma. I love her." "Chloe." Robert's voice turned harsh. "Your grandmother is fine now, but she's old. She's going to die soon anyway. Would you rather her money go to taxes and medical expenses, or that we use it to secure your future, to pay for your college, to buy you a car, to give you the life you deserve? Besides," Caroline added, "we're not hurting her. These nursing homes are very comfortable now. She'll be well cared for." "And what if she refuses to cooperate?" Chloe asked. "She won't have a choice," Robert replied. "Once the judge declares that she can't make her own decisions, I'll have full legal power. I can sell the house, manage her money, decide where she lives. It will all be legal." The audio cut off there. Leo stopped the recording and looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "Grandma, they're going to steal everything from you. And they're going to make you believe you're crazy so no one will believe you when you try to defend yourself." My world tilted. Hearing my own son talk about me as if I were already dead, as if my life were just an obstacle to his financial plans, was more painful than any illness I could imagine. "Is there more?" I asked, my voice sounding strangely calm. Leo nodded and played another clip. This time it was a conversation between Caroline and someone else, probably on the phone. "Yes, Vincent, I understand. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. The forged medical documents are perfect. No one will question them. We have pictures of her, looking confused, at the grocery store. We took them last week when she went shopping. In the photos, she looks disoriented because she was reading her shopping list, but a judge won't know that. The plan is to file the guardianship petition on Monday. By Wednesday, we should have full legal control. Monday. It was Friday. I only had 3 days. Leo, I said, taking his hands in mine. What else do you know? They've talked about you. His expression darkened. That's the part that scares me the most, Grandma. Last night I heard Dad talking to Mom about legally changing my last name once I turn 18. They want me to be called Leo Martinez instead of Leo Hernandez. I didn't immediately understand why that was important, but Leo continued, I think they want me to inherit some of your money automatically, as if I were your biological grandson. But, Grandma, there's something they've never told you. Something about my adoption. My heart stopped. What is it? When my biological parents died, there was a will. They left me money, but it's in a trust fund that I can't touch until I'm 21. It's about $150,000. Dad and Mom have been using that money for their expenses, telling me it was for my care and education, but I've seen the statements. They've spent almost all of it on things for themselves. The picture was becoming clearer and more horrifying. Not only were they planning to steal my money, but they had already been stealing Leo's money for years. Do you have proof of that? I asked. Leo pulled a folder from his backpack. I've been collecting documents for months. Bank statements, receipts, pictures of the expensive things they've bought. Mom's new car, the European vacation last year, their kitchen remodel. All paid for with my trust fund money. I quickly looked through the papers. It was enough evidence to send them to jail for embezzlement of a minor's funds. Leo, this is very dangerous. If they find out you know all this. I know, Grandma. That's why we need to act fast. He leaned toward me, his voice barely a whisper. I have a plan, but I need your help. What plan? Tonight they're going out to dinner to celebrate that everything is working out perfectly. Chloe is supposed to stay with me, supposedly to watch me, but really to make sure I don't do anything suspicious. But Chloe doesn't know that I know about the recordings on my phone. He pulled a second phone from his backpack. This is a prepaid phone I bought with my allowance money. Chloe doesn't know it exists. Tonight I'm going to pretend I'm sick to stay in my room. I'm going to record everything I can, phone conversations, documents on Dad's computer, any additional evidence. That's too risky, Leo. It's riskier to do nothing and let them steal everything from you. His eyes had a determination that reminded me of myself at his age. But I need you to do something too. What? You need to go to the bank today and take out all your money. Everything. And you need to go to a lawyer and change your will. Make me your main heir. Leo, I can't do that. You're too young and… Grandma, listen to me. His voice became urgent. Not forever. Just until this is over. If something happens to me, if they do something to me, at least your money will be protected. And when I turn 18, I can transfer everything back to you. The logic was sound, but the idea of involving a 16-year-old boy in this battle terrified me. There's something else, Leo continued. The lawyer they hired, Vincent Blackwood, is the same one who's been managing my trust fund. He's been in on this from the beginning. We can't trust him. I took out my phone and dialed the number of Arthur Vance, my trusted lawyer. After several rings, he answered with a sleepy voice. Mr. Vance, it's Elsa Martinez. I need to see you urgently today. It's a legal emergency. Mrs. Martinez, of course. Can you be at my office at 9? I'll be there. I hung up and looked at Leo. All right, we'll do this together. But you need to promise me that if at any moment you feel you're in danger, you will call me immediately. I promise, Grandma. He hugged me again, and for a moment, he was just my scared grandson, instead of the brave young man who was risking everything to protect me. Leo, one more question. Is Chloe really okay with all of this, or are they manipulating her too? His expression saddened. At first, I thought they were forcing her, but yesterday I heard her on the phone with a friend. She was talking about the new car Dad is going to buy her when this is all over. She's just as involved as they are, Grandma. She's just a better actress. Those words hurt the most. Chloe, my sweet granddaughter, the little girl I had comforted through her nightmares, had consciously chosen to betray me for money. We parted ways in the park, each heading to our own battle. Leo went to school, feigning normalcy while preparing his undercover operation for that night. I headed to Arthur Vance's office, carrying a bag full of documents and the weight of a betrayal I still couldn't fully process. As I walked to my car, a single question echoed in my mind. How had I raised a son capable of this? At what point had I failed so badly that Robert had grown up thinking my life was worth less than his financial comfort? But there was no time for self-pity. I had work to do. Arthur Vance's office was on the second floor of a red brick building in the city center. He was a 65-year-old man, bald, with thick glasses and a measured way of speaking that had always calmed me. But this morning, as I told him the whole story, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before, pure fury. "Elsa," he said after listening to Leo's recordings and reviewing all the documents, "this isn't just a family betrayal. This is large-scale criminal fraud. Forged medical documents, impersonating a licensed physician, conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement of a minor's funds, possible extortion. Your son and his wife could face years in prison for this." "Arthur, I don't want to send my son to prison," I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. "I just want to protect my money and protect Leo." "Elsa, look at me." He took my hands. "They won't stop here. If they succeed in having you declared legally incompetent, they will have access to everything: your house, your bank accounts, your insurance policies, your medical decisions. They could literally control you until the day you die. And when you do, Leo will inherit nothing because they will have already made sure everything is in their name." The reality of the situation hit me like a cold wave. It wasn't just about money. It was about my freedom, my autonomy, my right to live my final years as I chose. "What can we do?" I asked. Arthur went back to his desk. "First, we're changing your will immediately. We'll name Leo as your primary heir, but we'll also set up legal protections to ensure Robert can't challenge it, claiming undue influence." We spent the next hour filling out paperwork. I changed my will to leave 70% of my assets to Leo under the condition that he couldn't access the money until he was 21, and that it would be managed by an independent trust until then. The rest would be divided among my other relatives, with specific clauses preventing Robert or Caroline from touching a cent. "Second," Arthur continued, "we're establishing a durable power of attorney that specifically excludes Robert from making any medical or financial decisions for you. Leo will be your backup legal representative, and I will be the primary." He stamped the documents with his notary seal. "Third, we're going to the bank right now, and you're going to transfer all your money to new accounts that only you control." At the bank, I discovered something that chilled me to the bone. When I asked for the statements from the last 6 months, the teller showed me several transactions I hadn't authorized. Small but constant withdrawals. $50 here, $100 there. In total, nearly $3,000 had disappeared from my savings account. The teller reviewed the records. "According to our files, you authorized these transactions over the phone. We have recordings of the calls where you confirm your social security number and answer the security questions correctly." Arthur and I exchanged a look. A few minutes later, we were in a private office listening to my own voice authorize transactions I had never made. But it wasn't my voice. It was a very good imitation, but it wasn't me. "It's Chloe," I whispered. "My granddaughter can imitate my voice perfectly." "Mrs. Martinez, this is bank fraud," the teller said, mortified. "We need to report this to the authorities immediately." "Not yet," Arthur said quickly. "First, we need to secure the remaining funds and gather more evidence." I closed all my existing accounts and opened new ones with completely different passwords, transferring the $78,000 that remained. As we left the bank, my phone had been ringing constantly, 12 missed calls from Robert and 8 increasingly desperate texts. "Mom, where are you? We went to your house and you're not there. Mom, we're worried. Please call us. Mom, doctor. Harris wants to see you this afternoon for an evaluation. It's important." The last message was different. "Mom, if you don't call us in an hour, we're going to have to call the police. We're worried you might have gotten hurt or confused." They're starting to panic, Arthur observed. They probably went to the bank and found out you moved your money. I decided to call Robert to maintain the facade of normalcy until Leo could get more evidence that night. Mom, thank God, Robert said when he answered. Where have you been? I went shopping and had lunch with a friend. I lied smoothly. Why all the fuss? Why? Because we were worried. You seemed so confused yesterday, we thought maybe. I'm perfectly fine, Robert, I said, my voice calm and motherly. In fact, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. Maybe you're right. Maybe I do need some help. There was a telling silence, then muffled whispers. Really, Mom? Are you willing to consider our suggestions? Yes, dear. I think maybe I've been too stubborn. Could we talk tonight? Maybe you could come over with Caroline and the kids for dinner. Of course, Mom. Is 7 o'clock okay? Perfect. I'll make your favorite. I hung up and looked at Arthur. I've laid the bait. Now they think I'm giving in easily. Excellent, he said. That will make them overconfident. Now, we need to set the trap. We spent the rest of the afternoon setting up hidden security cameras in my house. Arthur had called a trusted private investigator, an ex-cop named Frank, who arrived with professional surveillance equipment. These will record everything, Frank explained, installing tiny devices in the corners of my living and dining rooms, high-quality audio and video. He also gave me a small device that looked like a pen, but was actually a recorder. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my house was fully monitored. Arthur and Frank set up in a van parked 2 blocks away, where they could watch and listen in real time. Elsa, Arthur said before he left, remember, your goal tonight is not to confront them. It's to get them to confess. Act confused, vulnerable. Let them think they're winning. At 6:30, I started cooking chicken in a savory red sauce, Robert's favorite since he was a child. The aroma filled the house, creating a comfortable domestic atmosphere that was a grotesque contrast to the psychological war about to begin. At exactly 7 o'clock, I heard Robert's car in the driveway. I took a deep breath, smoothed down the yellow dress I'd chosen specifically to make me look frail, and went to open the door. Family, I said with the brightest smile I could muster. Come in. Dinner is almost ready. Robert hugged me, but I could feel the tension in his muscles. Caroline kissed my cheek, but her eyes were calculating. Chloe hugged me and whispered, I love you, Grandma. The hypocrisy almost made me sick. Where's Leo? I asked. He was feeling a little sick, Caroline explained. We decided to let him rest at home. Perfect. The plan was working. After dessert, as we were having coffee in the living room, Robert finally brought it up. Mom, he began, we spoke with Dr. Harris this afternoon. Oh, yes? And what did he say? He's very worried about you, Caroline continued, pulling out her folder. He says the symptoms we described are consistent with the early stages of dementia. She showed me official-looking medical forms with Dr. Harris's letterhead. When did I go to Dr. Harris? I asked, feigning confusion. I don't remember going. Robert and Caroline exchanged a look that said, See? This proves our point. Mom, you went last week, Robert said gently. We took you. You don't remember. It was a blatant lie, but I pretended to think hard. No, I don't remember, I murmured. Are you sure? Completely sure, Mom. He leaned forward, his voice taking on that condescending tone adults use with small children. And the doctor says, these memory lapses are only going to get worse. He says you need specialized care. What kind of care? I asked, allowing a tremor into my voice. Caroline took my hand with a false tenderness. We've been looking at some wonderful options. There's a beautiful place just outside the city, Pleasant Meadows. It's like a resort, but with 24-hour medical staff. And my house? I asked. What would happen to my house? Well, Robert cleared his throat. The house is too big for you, Mom. And the care at Pleasant Meadows is expensive. We thought the most sensible thing would be to sell it and use that money to ensure you have the best possible care for many years. There it was, the confession I was waiting for. They wanted to sell my house, to pay for my own imprisonment. But this house, this is where I lived with your father, where we raised our family. Mom, it's just bricks and wood, Caroline said firmly. The memories are in your heart, not in a building. Besides, Robert added, It's not like you'll be in any condition to maintain it for long. Dr. Harris says your condition will deteriorate rapidly. In a few months, you probably won't even recognize the house anyway." His words pierced me like daggers. "What do you think, Grandma?" Chloe asked. "Would you like us to take you to see Pleasant Meadows tomorrow?" "I don't know," I said, pretending to be overwhelmed. "It's so much to process. How much would it cost?" "About $4,000 a month," Caroline answered quickly. "But with the money from the house sale, plus your savings, you could live there comfortably for many years." "And you?" I asked. "Where would you and the children live?" Another exchanged glance. "Well, Mom, we've been having some financial problems," Robert finally admitted. "We thought, maybe we could stay in this house temporarily, just until we get back on our feet financially. It would be a way to keep the house in the family. They were planning to use my money to remodel my house after they stole it." "There's one more thing," Caroline added, pulling a form from the folder. "We need you to sign this document. It's just a temporary power of attorney to let us handle your finances while you're at Pleasant Meadows. It's for your own protection. It wasn't temporary. It was a permanent power of attorney giving Robert complete control over my entire financial life." "Can I take it to my lawyer to have it reviewed?" I asked innocently. "Mom," Robert's voice hardened slightly, "our lawyer already reviewed it. It's a standard document. Involving multiple lawyers will just cost you unnecessary money." "Okay," I said finally. "Let me find my good pen." I went to the kitchen, pretending to search, but really giving them time to talk amongst themselves, hoping they'd say something else incriminating. "Do you think she suspects anything?" I heard Chloe whisper. "No. She's completely confused," said Caroline. "Once she signs this, we'll have total control. We can move her to Pleasant Meadows on Monday and put the house up for sale immediately." "And if she changes her mind?" Chloe asked. "Once she's committed, her opinions won't legally matter," Robert said. "The document she's about to sign gives me the authority to make all decisions for her." They had confessed their entire plan on camera. I returned with a pen. "You know what?" I said. "I think I need one more night to think about it. Tomorrow morning, I'll sign all the necessary papers." The disappointment on their faces was instant, but they tried to hide it. "Of course, Mom," Robert said. "Tomorrow is perfect." They left an hour later. As soon as their car was gone, Arthur and Frank were at my door. "Elsa," Arthur said with a fierce smile, "we've got them." Arthur and Frank sat up in my living room, reviewing the footage. "This is enough to prosecute them for conspiracy, fraud, attempted extortion, and forgery," Frank said. Then my phone rang. It was Leo, on his secret phone. "Grandma, I got it. I got everything. Are you safe, honey?" "Yes. Chloe thinks I'm asleep. I got into Dad's computer. There are files with everything, emails with the lawyer, Vincent Blackwood, money transfers from my trust fund, even a fake sales contract for your house that they already prepared. A sales contract. Yes, it's dated for next week. They're going to say you signed it voluntarily before your illness got worse." Arthur leaned into the phone. "Leo, this is Arthur Vance. Can you email those files to a secure address I'm about to give you? I already copied them to a USB drive, but I can email them too. Just give me 5 minutes." A few minutes later, the files arrived. It was worse than I had imagined. They hadn't just planned to steal my money. They had been systematically stealing from Leo's trust fund for years. It was at that moment, as we stared at the proof of their crimes, that my regular phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Martinez? It's Sergeant Miller from the police department. We've received a report that you've had a mental breakdown and have abducted your grandson, Leo. We need you to come to the station immediately." Another call came in from Vincent Blackwood. "Mrs. Martinez, I've been informed of the situation with Leo and your recent erratic behavior. I strongly suggest you turn the minor over to the authorities and submit to a voluntary psychiatric evaluation. This could prevent more serious criminal charges." The corrupt lawyer. They had completely flipped the narrative. Now I was the criminal, the senile grandmother who had kidnapped her own grandson. It was brilliant and diabolical. "They've called the police," I told Arthur, showing him my phone. "They're saying I kidnapped Leo." Arthur listened to the messages. "It's a desperate but smart move. They're trying to get control of you before you can press charges against them. What do? We accelerate everything. We're going to the district attorney's office right now. With Leo. We woke Leo and left through the back door, using Frank's van parked on the next street over. We hadn't driven 2 blocks before we saw the squad cars turning onto my street. The DA, a woman in her 50s named Noemi Vasquez, met us in her office at exactly 8 o'clock. "Before I review your evidence," she said, "I need to speak with Leo alone." 20 minutes later, they emerged. The DA's expression had changed completely. "Mrs. Martinez, it's clear Leo came to you voluntarily. There is no evidence of abduction. Now, please show me the evidence you have against Leo's adoptive parents." We spent the next 2 hours presenting everything. When we finished, she leaned back in her chair. "This is a case of massive fraud and child abuse," she said. "I'm issuing arrest warrants immediately." Her phone rang. After a brief conversation, she hung up. "There are new developments. The police went to arrest Robert Martinez and Caroline Hernandez an hour ago, but they weren't there. Neighbors saw a moving truck at the house very early this morning. It seems they fled." My heart sank. "What about Chloe?" Diego asked in a small voice. "Chloe disappeared with them as well. Since she's an adult, she will face charges when we find them. We've frozen all their bank accounts and issued a nationwide alert. They won't get far," she added. "We also discovered that the lawyer, Vincent Blackwood, has serious issues with the state bar. He's been suspended from practicing law for 6 months for unethical conduct in prior cases. Any document he prepared for your family is legally invalid. The DA arranged for Leo to stay with me under the supervision of a social worker until the situation was resolved. On the way home, we stopped at the bank. The DA had been true to her word. A court order had been issued, returning all the stolen money to my account and to Leo's trust fund. In total, they had stolen nearly $90,000. 6 months later, I was in my garden watching Leo plant tomatoes when the phone rang. It was DA Vasquez. "Mrs. Martinez, we found them." "Where were they?" "In a small town in Arizona, working on a farm under false names. They're being transported back today to face the charges." The trial took place 3 months later. I testified, not with anger, but with a deep sadness for everything that had been lost. When Leo testified, his voice was firm but pained. He spoke of years of feeling used, of discovering that the people he loved had been stealing his inheritance since he was 3. "Do you forgive them?" Robert's defense attorney asked him. Leo thought for a long time. "I forgive them for what they did to me," he said finally. "But I can't forgive them for what they did to my grandmother. She didn't deserve that." The sentences were severe. Robert received 5 years in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Caroline received 4 years. Chloe, because of her age at the time of some of the crimes, received 3 years of probation and 800 hours of community service. Vincent Blackwood, the corrupt lawyer, was permanently disbarred and received 2 years in prison. After the trial, Chloe approached me on the courthouse steps. "Grandma," she said, her voice a bare whisper, "can you ever forgive me?" "Chloe, I already forgive you," I told her. "But forgiveness doesn't erase the consequences. You have lost my trust forever, and that is something you will have to live with." 2 years later, Leo graduated from high school as the valedictorian of his class, with a full scholarship to a prestigious university for engineering. "Grandma," he said as we toasted with sparkling cider, "do you ever regret fighting them?" "Never," I answered without hesitation, not just because I had a right to protect what was mine, but because I had a duty to protect you, and I had a duty to teach you that actions have consequences. Now, 5 years after that night that changed everything, I live alone in my house, but I don't feel lonely. Leo visits every weekend from college. We've built a life together, healing the wounds his family left behind. I've learned that true love requires mutual respect, honesty, and a willingness to make sacrifices for the other's well-being. What my family had offered me was not love. It was toxic dependency disguised as affection. Yesterday, Leo brought me flowers from his university's garden. "For the bravest woman I know," he said. "I don't feel brave. I just feel like a woman who did what she had to do. But maybe that's what being brave really is, not the absence of fear, but doing the right thing in spite of it. Tonight, as I write these last words in my journal, I can hear the sound of rain gently tapping against the windows of the house I almost lost. Leo is upstairs studying for his finals. The chamomile tea is cooling on the table beside me. Everything is quiet, safe, and in its right place. They never touched my name again, and I never went back.